any man I've ever met.
Who are you looking for?
William Shakespeare.
I see landscape, oceans.
One of Father's players.
Will you be brave?
Children's hearts beat. They smile, play.
Mama!
My boy.
What is in it?
In what?
The play.
To sleep, perchance to dream.
Why?
Bye.
Why?
The motion picture Hamnet is a historical drama film produced throughout 2024 and premiered in late 2025, directed by Academy Award-winning filmmaker Chloé Zhao, who co-wrote the screenplay with author Maggie O'Farrell based on O'Farrell's acclaimed 2020 novel of the same name. Produced with an estimated production budget of $30 to $35 million by Hera Pictures, Neal Street Productions, Amblin Entertainment, and Book of Shadows, the film features executive and main production leadership from Liza Marshall, Pippa Harris, Nicholas Gonda, Steven Spielberg, and Sam Mendes. The primary cast features Jessie Buckley in a critically celebrated lead performance as Agnes Hathaway, Paul Mescal as William Shakespeare, Jacobi Jupe as young Hamnet Shakespeare, Olivia Lines as Judith Shakespeare, Bodhi Ray Brethnick as Susanna Shakespeare, Emily Watson as Mary Shakespeare, David Wilmot as John Shakespeare, and Joe Alwyn as Bartholomew Hathaway. The narrative unfolds in the picturesque rural landscape surrounding Stratford-upon-Avon in Warwickshire, England, during the final decades of the 16th century. Agnes Hathaway is a young woman of mystical grace and deep intuition, living on the periphery of the ancient forest. Deeply attuned to nature, she spends her days roaming the woods, foraging wild herbs, caring for local flora, and flying her falcon. The conservative villagers view her with a mixture of quiet awe and superstitious distrust, suspecting that she possesses uncanny abilities inherited from her late mother, whom many considered a forest healer or witch. William Shakespeare is an energetic yet troubled young man in his late teens, working as a Latin tutor to pay off the heavy debts accumulated by his father John Shakespeare, a fallen Glover whose social standing has crumbled due to illegal wool trading and financial misfortune. William spends his days instructing the sons of local gentry, but his heart belongs entirely to language, poetry, storytelling, and the human imagination. One afternoon, while walking along the shadowed paths near the forest's edge, William catches sight of Agnes standing in a sunlit clearing with a golden hawk perched upon her falconry glove. Mesmerized by her fiery independence and serene presence, William pauses his lessons to approach her. Their initial meeting is sparked by intense mutual curiosity. When William accidentally suffers a minor cut across his forehead while traversing the rough terrain, Agnes gently tends to his wound using crushed forest herbs and a cloth from her pouch. In return for her care, William recounts the ancient Greek legend of Orpheus and Eurydice, enchanting Agnes with his vivid mastery of spoken words and emotional depth. A passionate courtship blossoms quickly between them, hidden beneath the canopy of the Warwickshire woods, far away from the rigid societal expectations of their families. Their romance faces immediate domestic resistance. William's mother Mary Shakespeare worries that Agnes's unusual reputation will further damage their family's standing in Stratford, while Agnes's stepmother Joan Hathaway considers William an unreliable, penniless youth without property or steady trade. Despite these objections, when Agnes becomes pregnant, the couple marries in a modest ceremony in late 1582. They take up residence in a small, cramped annex attached to John Shakespeare's Henley Street property. Life in the overcrowded household is tense and challenging, but Agnes gives birth to their first child, a daughter named Susanna. 2 years later, in early 1585, Agnes gives birth to twins, a boy named Hamnet and a girl named Judith. As the household grows, William finds himself suffocating within the narrow boundaries of Stratford. He spends his days working in his father's glove shop, stitching leather and dealing with creditors, but his mind constantly wanders toward theatre, poetry, and the bustling cultural pulse of London. Agnes senses his growing frustration, artistic restlessness, and unspoken melancholy. Recognizing that his extraordinary gift for writing requires a vast stage to mature, Agnes makes the selfless decision to encourage William to travel south to London to pursue his dramatic career, promising to remain in Stratford to raise their 3 children and manage the household. In London, William slowly establishes himself within the booming theatrical world of the Elizabethan era, joining player troupes, revising old scripts, and eventually authoring original plays that captivate both common theatergoers and aristocratic patrons. He sends regular financial support back to Warwickshire and returns home for periodic visits during seasonal holidays and theatrical closures. In his absence, Agnes carries the full responsibility of parenting. The twin children, Hamnet and Judith, develop an extraordinary bond as they grow into spirited 11-year-olds. They share an intuitive connection so profound that villagers remark they seem to share a single soul. They roam the fields together, create imaginary worlds along the riverbanks, and comfort each other during illness or fear. In the hot summer of 1596, a catastrophic wave of the bubonic plague sweeps across England, creeping into rural villages including Stratford-upon-Avon. While William is in London working on new theatrical productions, 11-year-old Judith suddenly falls gravely ill with burning fever, violent chills, and swelling buboes beneath her skin. Agnes immediately recognizes the terrifying symptoms of pestilence and transforms her home into an infirmary, applying herbal poultices, cooling wraps, and remedies passed down from her mother. As Judith's condition deteriorates into delirium, her twin brother Hamnet refuses to leave her side, keeping constant vigil by her bed despite his mother's urgent warnings. Seeing his sister hovering on the brink of death, Hamnet is filled with profound love and childlike desperation. Remembering the folklore stories his mother shared about tricking fate and trading places with nature, young Hamnet leans over his unconscious sister and whispers a sacred prayer. He calls upon his mother's falcon and makes a silent vow to trade his life for Judith's, offering himself to death so that his sister might survive. Miraculously, by the following morning, Judith's fever breaks, her breathing stabilizes, and the dark swellings on her body begin to recede. However, the terrible sickness shifts instantly onto Hamnet. Within hours, the boy collapses with an overwhelming fever. Agnes is plunged into utter panic as her beloved son deteriorates rapidly before her eyes. She mobilizes every natural remedy, potion, and prayer in her knowledge, nursing him continuously without sleep. Despite her desperate efforts, Hamnet's body grows weaker with each passing hour. On his final night, in a state of high fever, Hamnet experiences vivid hallucinations, imagining himself standing upon a grand, illuminated stage inside a wooden theater, calling out for his mother and reaching toward a glowing hawk soaring overhead. Surrounded by his weeping mother and sisters, Hamnet draws his last breath and passes away. Word of the tragedy reaches William in London via an urgent messenger. Shattered by the news, William rides frantically on horseback through rain and mud toward Stratford, but arrives long after his son's heart has stopped. He enters the silent house to find Agnes cradling Hamnet's cold body on the bed, her face locked in a mask of feral, devastating grief. The family holds a heartbreaking funeral service at Holy Trinity Church, burying 11-year-old Hamnet in the parish churchyard under heavy gray skies. The loss fractures the family's internal structure. Agnes is consumed by intense sorrow, feeling as though half of her soul has been torn away, while William collapses into internal silence, unable to express his agonizing pain aloud to his wife. Unable to process his grief within the walls of Stratford, William retreats back to London, seeking refuge in intense, relentless work at the theatre. Agnes feels deeply abandoned and betrayed by his departure, unable to comprehend how her husband can return to the world of greasepaint, actors, and comedic plays while their son lies alone beneath the earth. Distance and silence widen the rift between them. For several years, Agnes nurtures her surviving daughters Susanna and Judith in Stratford, carrying the quiet, heavy burden of maternal loss while local life moves forward around her. In the spring of 1601, travelers arriving from London bring news to Warwickshire that William Shakespeare's company has completed a massive new tragic play that is taking the city by storm. Agnes is shocked to learn the title of the play, Hamlet. In Elizabethan England, the names Hamnet and Hamlet are completely interchangeable in spelling and pronunciation. Outraged and deeply wounded, Agnes believes that William has callously exploited the memory of their dead 11-year-old son to create a public entertainment for profit and applause. Fueled by anger, confusion, and a desire to confront her husband, Agnes decides to journey to London for the first time in her life. Traveling south by wagon and foot, Agnes arrives in the chaotic, crowded metropolis of London. She navigates the noisy streets, crossed with foul alleys and packed with vendors, until she reaches the southern banks of the River Thames where the Globe Theatre stands. She purchases a standing ticket and enters the wooden amphitheatre, blending into the crowd of groundlings standing in the open-air pit before the wooden stage. She stands with her cloak pulled tight, her eyes fixed on the empty stage, preparing to despise whatever spectacle her husband has crafted from their private tragedy. The performance begins as trumpet fanfares echo through the theatre. Actors dressed in courtly attire enter, and soon the lead actor playing Prince Hamlet walks onto the stage. As the play unfolds, Agnes listens intently to the poetry pouring from the stage. She watches the young prince wrestle with unbearable grief over the death of his father, speaking of the heavy shadow of mortality, the painful weight of memory, and the longing to cross the boundary between life and death. As scene follows scene, Agnes's anger gradually dissolves into profound awe and heartbreak. She begins to realize that William did not write the play to exploit or move past their son's memory, but rather because his grief was too immense to contain inside his own heart. Through the medium of drama, William built an immortal vessel for their lost child. He created a world where a living son can speak across the void to the ghost of his father, where love defies the finality of the grave, and where the agony of loss is given sacred form and immortal beauty. During the play's dramatic climax, William Shakespeare himself steps onto the stage playing the spectral role of the ghost of Hamlet's father. Dressed in armor, he speaks of walking the night and bearing the agonizing burden of remembrance. As William delivers his lines, his gaze sweeps across the crowded pit and suddenly halts upon Agnes. Through the sea of faces, his eyes meet hers. In that intense, silent gaze across the theater space, years of unspoken pain, distance, and shared grief collapse into complete understanding. Tears flow down Agnes's face as she recognizes the depth of her husband's suffering and the quiet, agonizing way he poured his shattered heart into immortal art. When the performance reaches its powerful conclusion, the audience erupts into thunderous applause, deeply moved by the tragic tale. Agnes stands quietly amidst the cheering crowd, feeling a profound sense of catharsis and spiritual peace wash over her soul. She understands that while their physical son Hamnet is gone, his spirit lives on eternally through the love they shared and the transcendent art created in his honor. Agnes leaves the Globe Theatre into the evening light of London, carrying a restored heart, free from bitterness, forever connected to her husband through love, loss, and memory. The film concludes with Agnes returning home to the quiet hills of Stratford-upon-Avon. She walks through the morning mist toward the forest edge, where the natural world continues its timeless cycle of life, growth, and renewal. She reaches out her hand to the sky as a golden hawk swoops down through the trees, symbolizing the eternal presence of her son in the wind, the earth, and the light, bringing the story to a serene and deeply emotional close. The historical drama feature film Hamnet was produced throughout 2024 and released internationally in late 2025, directed by Academy Award winner Chloé Zhao and adapted for the screen alongside author Maggie O'Farrell from her celebrated 2020 best-selling novel. Created on an estimated production budget ranging between $30 and $35 million, the film was brought to life by production companies Hera Pictures, Neal Street Productions, Amblin Entertainment, and Book of Shadows, with executive and lead producing duties handled by Liza Marshall, Pippa Harris, Nicholas Gonda, Steven Spielberg, and Sam Mendes. The principal cast stars Jessie Buckley portraying Agnes Hathaway, Paul Mescal as William Shakespeare, Jacobi Jupe playing young Hamnet Shakespeare, Olivia Lines as Judith Shakespeare, Bodhi Ray Brethnick as Susanna Shakespeare, Emily Watson as Mary Shakespeare, David Wilmot as John Shakespeare, and Joe Alwyn as Bartholomew Hathaway. Following the profound resolution surrounding the production of Hamlet at the Globe Theatre in London, the psychological and spiritual aftermath of grief continues to shape the internal lives of Agnes and William Shakespeare. In the aftermath of her journey to the capital, Agnes returns to the rolling hills and quiet isolation of Stratford-upon-Avon carrying a transformed inner life. The bitterness that had poisoned her memories of William's artistic career in London softens into a quiet, solemn reverence. She recognizes that the act of storytelling in dramatic creation is not a betrayal of their real son's memory, but rather the only altar William could construct to hold a grief too vast for ordinary words. Back in the small Warwickshire township, life attempts to regain its steady, ancient rhythm. Agnes spends her early mornings gathering bitter remedies, sweet lavender, wild mint, and yarrow along the edge of the Forest of Arden. Her eldest daughter Susanna, now growing into a thoughtful, composed young woman, assists her mother with increasing skill, learning the precise ratios of herbal tinctures, ointment preparations, and physical care required to heal the sick. Judith, the surviving twin, carries the silent weight of a living shadow. Though physical health returns to her body after the horrors of the plague, she constantly senses the absent half of her identity, looking toward empty doorways, riverbanks, and woodland clearings where she and Hamnet once ran together. Agnes gives Judith space to mourn, wrapping her in unconditional maternal affection while teaching her to find comfort in the living world. In London, William Shakespeare undergoes a profound artistic transformation during the first years of the 17th century. Driven by the internal emotional opening that occurred during Agnes's visit to the Globe, his writing shifts away from dark, tormenting revenge tragedies toward deep explorations of grace, reconciliation, age, and spiritual redemption. He pours his energy into writing plays where lost children are miraculously restored to weeping parents, where long-separated spouses are reunited across stormy seas, and where the magical forces of nature work to repair human heartbreak. His theatre company, now under the royal patronage of King James I and renamed the King's Men, enjoys immense popularity across the city, yet William's heart turns with increasing frequency toward the quiet green countryside of his origins. William begins making regular, prolonged visits home to Henley Street and eventually purchases New Place, the second largest grand residence in Stratford-upon-Avon. The grand house, with its spacious gardens, orchards, and stone hearths, becomes a symbol of the security and dignity William longed to provide his family since his youth. Together with Agnes, he fills the home with warmth, books, and light. The local community, which once looked upon William as the runaway son of a disgraced Glover, now regards him with immense respect as a man of property, literary genius, and civic pride. However, inside the walls of New Place, William remains simply a father and husband seeking solace from the relentless noise of the London theatre world. As years pass, the family experiences the natural transitions of time. Susanna marries John Hall, a respected local physician of intellect and deep principle, bringing new life into the family circle with the birth of a granddaughter named Elizabeth. The arrival of the child brings immense warmth to Agnes, filling the rooms of New Place with soft laughter and gentle domestic energy that eases the lingering quiet left by Hamnet's absence. Judith grows into a spirited woman, eventually marrying Thomas Quinney, continuing the family lineage in Stratford. During these years, Agnes continues her herbal work, becoming an indispensable pillar of wisdom, medical care, and quiet comfort for the women and families across the Warwickshire countryside. In the winter of 1613, catastrophic news arrives from London that sent shockwaves through the theatrical community. During a grand performance of Henry VIII at the Globe Theatre, a stage cannon fired during a dramatic scene ignited the thatched roof of the wooden amphitheatre. Within an hour, the magnificent structure burned to the ground, consumed by flames in full view of thousands of spectators. For William, the destruction of the Globe marks the definitive end of an era in his life. Rather than rebuild his artistic kingdom in London, he makes the final decision to retire completely from the London stage, closing his career as a playwright and returning permanently to live out his remaining years with Agnes in Stratford. The final years of William's life at New Place are marked by quiet reflection, deep companionship, and simple living. He and Agnes walked together through the meadows they roamed in their youth, sitting beside the river Avon as twilight falls over the trees. Their marriage, forged through early passion, tested by distance and devastating loss, arrives at a state of profound peace and spiritual unity. They speak openly of Hamnet without tears, remembering his infectious laughter, his fierce loyalty to his twin sister, and his bright, curious eyes. They realize that their lost son lives not only in the lines of Hamlet, but in every breeze blowing through the trees, every hawk soaring in the high sky, and every quiet moment of love shared between them. In the spring of 1616, William Shakespeare falls ill with a severe fever following an evening spent in the company of visiting literary friends. Agnes sits by his bedside in the upstairs chamber of New Place, holding his hand and nursing him with the same gentle care she offered him when they first met in the forest decades earlier. Surrounded by Agnes, Susanna, and Judith, William peacefully passes away on April 23, 1616. He is laid to rest near the altar of Holy Trinity Church in Stratford, the same ancient church where he was baptized and where young Hamnet lies buried in the earth outside. Following William's passing, Agnes continues to live at New Place, surrounded by her daughters, grandchildren, and the enduring affection of the local people. She maintains her deep connection to the natural world, walking into the forest as an elderly woman of grace and quiet dignity. The film closes with a breathtaking visual motif. Agnes stands in the high meadow overlooking the valley of Stratford as the sun sets, casting a golden light across the landscape. She releases a trained falcon into the glowing evening sky. As the bird ascends into the clouds, soaring freely above the earth, Agnes looks up with a serene smile, knowing that love, art, and memory transcend time and death, uniting all souls in an eternal embrace. The epic historical drama film Hamnet was developed throughout 2024 and premiered globally in late 2025, directed by Academy Award winner Chloé Zhao, who co-wrote the motion picture screenplay with author Maggie O'Farrell based on O'Farrell's celebrated 2020 literary novel. Created with an estimated budget of $30 to $35 million, the production was financed and realized by Hera Pictures, Neal Street Productions, Amblin Entertainment, and Book of Shadows, with lead executive producing duties helmed by Liza Marshall, Pippa Harris, Nicholas Gonda, Steven Spielberg, and Sam Mendes. The international feature film stars Jessie Buckley as Agnes Hathaway, Paul Mescal as William Shakespeare, Jacobi Jupe as young Hamnet Shakespeare, Olivia Lynes as Judith Shakespeare, Bodhi Ray Brethnick as Susanna Shakespeare, Emily Watson as Mary Shakespeare, David Wilmot as John Shakespeare, and Joe Alwyn as Bartholomew Hathaway. Following the passing of William Shakespeare in the spring of 1616, the quiet sanctuary of New Place in Stratford-upon-Avon becomes a place of sacred memory, enduring dignity, and spiritual reflection for Agnes Hathaway and her surviving family. The vast house, surrounded by blooming cherry trees, medicinal herb gardens, and ancient stone walls, stands as a living testament to the journey Agnes and William shared across more than 3 decades of marriage, love, creation, and loss. The town of Stratford, which had once looked upon Agnes with suspicion and upon William as an unstable youth fleeing his father's debts, now holds the family in profound reverence. Travelers, scholars, actors, and fellow poets from London, Oxford, and across the English countryside make quiet pilgrimages to Warwickshire to pay their respects to the widow of the world's greatest playwright and poet. Agnes approaches her later years not with mournful retreat, but with vibrant engagement in the living world around her. Every morning before the sun clears the horizon of the Forest of Arden, Agnes walks through the wet grass, gathering elderberry, chamomile, St. John's wort, and wild thyme. Her deep knowledge of herbal medicine remains as sharp and compassionate as ever. Villagers from miles around, including young mothers, sick children, and elderly farmers, continue to seek her out at New Place for physical healing, advice, and spiritual comfort. Agnes receives them all with quiet grace, refusing payment and continuing her mother's ancient legacy as a protector and healer of her community. Her daughter Susanna, now mature and highly respected alongside her physician husband Dr. John Hall, works alongside Agnes in preparing complex remedies and documenting herbal treatments. Their partnership bridges the gap between traditional folk wisdom and emerging medical science. Susanna's daughter Elizabeth grows up inside New Place, filling the historic corridors with youth and energy. Judith, the surviving twin who once felt defined by the tragic void left by her brother Hamnet, finds her own peace and grounding in motherhood and domestic stability, realizing that her survival was not a guilt to carry, but a precious gift bestowed by her brother's selfless love years ago. In London, the literary world moves to ensure that William Shakespeare's voice will never fade from human memory. In the years following his death, his longtime theatrical companions, fellow actors, and partners in The King's Men, John Hemming and Henry Condell, begin the monumental task of gathering, editing, and preserving all of William's theatrical plays. Many of these masterworks existed only as scattered actor prompts, worn manuscript pages, and backstage prompt books stored in chest boxes across London theatres. Hemming and Condell worked tirelessly to collect 36 of his plays into a single, authoritative volume known to history as the First Folio. Word of this monumental publishing project reaches Agnes in Stratford through personal letters sent by the London players. In 1623, a heavy leather-bound volume wrapped in protective cloth arrives at New Place, sent directly to Agnes and her daughters. Opening the massive book, Agnes sees the iconic engraved portrait of her late husband on the frontispiece, followed by dedicated tributes written by his peers, including Ben Jonson, who famously declares that William was not of an age, but for all time. As Agnes turns the thick paper pages, her fingers touch the printed lines of Hamlet, Twelfth Night, The Tempest, A Midsummer Night's Dream, and Winter's Tale. She realizes that the words her husband whispered in the dark corners of their small room, written on scraps of parchment in the dead of night, have now become an immortal fortress for the human soul. Holding the First Folio close to her chest, Agnes reflects on the intricate tapestry of their lives. She sees how every sorrow they endured, the poverty of their early years in Henley Street, the painful distance separated by London roads, and above all, the shattering death of their 11-year-old son Hamnet, was transformed through love and artistic creation into timeless art that will comfort millions of grieving human beings across future centuries. She understands that Hamnet's brief life on Earth was not a brief tragedy ended in dust, but a spark that ignited an eternal fire of literature, theater, and emotional truth. As autumn turns to winter, Agnes feels her own earthly energy slowing down. She spends her final days sitting by the stone hearth at New Place, wrapped in warm wool, surrounded by her daughters Susanna and Judith, her granddaughter Elizabeth, and her close family friends. She shares stories of the old days, speaking of the high trees where she trained her golden hawk, the first time she saw William standing near the woods with his Latin books, and the playful laughter of the young twins running through the green fields of Warwickshire. Her mind remains clear, serene, and free from fear, viewing death not as an end, but as a gentle return to the natural harmony she had loved her entire life. In the quiet late hours of a winter night, Agnes peacefully closes her eyes, surrounded by the soft prayers of her children. She is laid to rest beside William inside Holy Trinity Church, near the quiet waters of the River Avon, returning her physical form to the earth of Stratford while her spirit joins the eternal landscape she loved so dearly. The final sequence of the film moves beyond the boundaries of 17th century England, presenting a sweeping, poetic montage that connects the past to the present day. The camera glides over the timeless Warwickshire countryside, showing the ancient oaks of the Forest of Arden swaying in the wind, the morning mist rising off the Avon River, and the warm sunlight illuminating the wooden beams of Shakespeare's birthplace and new place. The imagery shifts across centuries, showing generation after generation of human beings, students reading Hamlet in quiet libraries, actors performing on international stages, grieving parents finding solace in poetry, and audiences watching stories in modern theaters, all connected by the universal human emotions of love, grief, memory, and hope. The camera returns to the high green meadow above Stratford in late afternoon light. A young 11-year-old boy, wearing historic linen, stands at the edge of the hill beside a wild falcon perched upon a wooden branch. He turns his head toward the camera, revealing the gentle, bright face of Hamnet Shakespeare. He smiles with complete peace and joy, holding out his hand into the open sky. The golden hawk takes flight from his hand, rising high into the glowing clouds, soaring higher and higher until it merges into the bright light of the setting sun. The scene fades to black as the majestic orchestral score reaches its transcendent finale, leaving the viewer with an overwhelming sense of beauty, catharsis, and the eternal power of love over death. The epic historical drama motion picture Hamnet was brought to life in late 2025 under the direction of Academy Award winner Chloé Zhao, who co-wrote the screenplay alongside author Maggie O'Farrell, adapting O'Farrell's celebrated 2020 literary masterpiece. Financed and produced with a budget estimated between $30 and $35 million, the film was brought to the screen by production companies Hera Pictures, Neal Street Productions, Amblin Entertainment, and Book of Shadows, with executive and lead production supervision handled by Liza Marshall, Pippa Harris, Nicholas Gonda, Steven Spielberg, and Sam Mendes. The primary cast stars Jessie Buckley as Agnes Hathaway, Paul Mescal as William Shakespeare, Jacobi Jupe as young Hamnet Shakespeare, Olivia Lynes as Judith Shakespeare, Bodhi Ray Brethnick as Susanna Shakespeare, Emily Watson as Mary Shakespeare, David Wilmot as John Shakespeare, and Joe Alwyn as Bartholomew Hathaway. Following the spiritual release and emotional closure achieved by Agnes and William Shakespeare, the deeper layers of their creative and domestic journey reveal the subtle, invisible threads that bound their lived experience to the theatrical heritage of the world. In the years during which William lived between London and Stratford-upon-Avon, the physical distance between the bustling urban theatre and the quiet silence of the Warwickshire countryside created an internal tension that fueled his literary output. While London provided the physical machinery of the stage, the wooden galleries, the bustling crowds, the trumpets, and the dramatic lights, it was the deep, quiet root of Stratford and the untamed natural wisdom of Agnes that provided the soul of his writing. In the small cottage and later at New Place, Agnes maintained her intimate relationship with the land, observing the changing of seasons, the migration of birds, the blooming of hedgerows, and the subtle shifts in human health. Her understanding of the world was direct, intuitive, and sensory, rooted in the physical reality of soil, rain, blood, and breath. William, by contrast, lived in a world of symbols, metaphors, and articulated language. Whenever William returned home from the filthy, crowded streets of London, carrying the exhaustion of theatrical rivalries and royal demands, Agnes provided a sanctuary where language gave way to presence. She would take his ink-stained hands into her own, washing them with lavender water and leading him through the quiet orchards, allowing the noise of the city to dissolve into the quiet murmurs of the countryside. This dynamic between wild intuition and articulated language shaped the domestic realm in ways that directly influenced their children. Young Hamnet and Judith grew up in an environment where the boundaries between reality and imagination were constantly fluid. Their mother taught them the names of every plant, the tracks of animals in the mud, and the strange, quiet magic of the forest, while their father filled their minds with stories of ancient kings, magical islands, Roman generals, and tragic lovers. The twin children absorbed both worlds simultaneously, creating a private universe that belonged only to the two of them. They developed a silent vocabulary composed of shared glances, mimicry, and unspoken thoughts, floating through the fields like two halves of a single spiritual entity. When the devastating plague struck in 1596, taking young Hamnet's life, the tragedy disrupted not only the family unit but the fundamental order of their universe. The sudden loss of one twin severed the invisible bond that Judith and Hamnet shared, leaving Judith to navigate the physical world with a profound sense of phantom emptiness. Agnes, whose entire life was built upon her ability to heal, protect, and read the subtle signs of nature, faced the unbearable limitation of human power against death. In her grief, she initially turned inward, shunning the village and seeking answers in the dark, silent depths of the forest where her mother had once walked. For William, the death of his only son struck at the core of his identity as a father and a man of lineage. In Elizabethan society, a son represented the continuation of the family name, the heir to property, and the living bridge to future generations. Without Hamnet, the material success William had achieved in London, the coat of arms secured for his father, the purchase of grand property, the acclaim of nobility, felt hollow and fleeting. Unable to express his grief through weeping or shared domestic mourning, William converted his anguish into relentless creative labor. He returned to London and poured his heartbreak into the physical ink on paper, discovering that while he could not save his son in the physical world, he could grant him eternal life within the boundless realm of dramatic art. The creation of Hamlet served as the ultimate bridge between William's artistic world in London and Agnes's intuitive world in Stratford. When Agnes traveled south to see the performance at the Globe Theatre, she did not merely watch a play. She stepped into the architecture of her husband's grieving heart. Sitting in the open-air theatre, watching the ghost of the dead father speak to the living son, Agnes recognized that William had inverted their reality to cope with the unbearable truth. In their real life, the living parents mourned the dead son. On the stage, the dead father reached across the boundary of mortality to guide and love the living son. The stage became a sacred space where death was temporarily defeated by poetry, performance, and shared human memory. This mutual understanding allowed Agnes and William to reconcile their individual paths of mourning. Rather than growing apart into permanent isolation, they reconnected through a shared reverence for what had been lost and what remained. During his final retirement to Stratford, William spent his days working in the gardens of New Place alongside Agnes, tending to apple trees, repairing stone walls, and sitting by the fire as their daughters and grandchildren filled the house with life. The quiet wisdom that Agnes had carried throughout her life became William's ultimate comfort in his final years, allowing him to lay down his pen with peace, knowing that his work was complete and his family was secure. The legacy of Hamnet Shakespeare extends far beyond the quiet churchyard in Stratford-upon-Avon where his body rests beneath the Warwickshire soil. Through the enduring power of his father's words and the deep, loving memory preserved by his mother, the young boy who died in the hot summer of 1596 became an immortal symbol of youth, innocence, and the profound tragedy of early loss. The film captures this transcendent transformation, illustrating how personal heartbreak, when met with extraordinary love and artistic devotion, can be elevated into a universal light that continues to illuminate the human condition across centuries, proving that love and memory are ultimately stronger than time and death. The historical drama feature film Hamnet was developed throughout 2024 and premiered globally in late 2025, directed by Academy Award winner Chloé Zhao, who co-wrote the motion picture screenplay with author Maggie O'Farrell based on O'Farrell's celebrated 2020 literary novel. Produced with an estimated production budget of $30 to $35 million by Hera Pictures, Neal Street Productions, Amblin Entertainment, and Book of Shadows, the film features executive and main production leadership from Liza Marshall, Pippa Harris, Nicholas Gonda, Steven Spielberg, and Sam Mendes. The principal cast stars Jessie Buckley portraying Agnes Hathaway, Paul Mescal as William Shakespeare, Jacobi Jupe playing young Hamnet Shakespeare, Olivia Lynes as Judith Shakespeare, Bodhi Ray Brethnick as Susanna Shakespeare, Emily Watson as Mary Shakespeare, David Wilmot as John Shakespeare, and Joe Alwyn as Bartholomew Hathaway. The deeper philosophical resonance of Hamnet reaches beyond the immediate domestic circle of the Shakespeare family to examine how human memory, grief, and physical geography intertwine across time to create cultural heritage. In the late 16th century, the town of Stratford-upon-Avon was a community governed by the natural rhythms of agriculture, market days, religious holidays, and the sudden, terrifying visits of seasonal diseases. Within this world, Agnes Hathaway stood as a figure uniquely attuned to the silent forces shaping human existence. Her connection to the ancient forest of Arden, her deep understanding of plant biology, and her acute sensory perception allowed her to experience life with an intensity that fascinated and intimidated the conventional inhabitants of her village. She did not view nature as an enemy to be conquered, but as a vast, living organism of which human beings were merely a fragile part. When William Shakespeare entered her life, two distinct ways of knowing the world came together. Agnes possessed the knowledge of the earth, the physical body, the unsaid intuition, and the quiet wildness of the woods. William possessed the mastery of language, the drive to articulate complex internal states, the ambition to capture social structures, and the vision to transform human emotion into theatrical form. Their union was not merely a romantic pairing, but a meeting of nature and artifice, intuition and expression, countryside and city. This duality defined their household on Henley Street and later at New Place, shaping the atmosphere in which their three children, Susanna, Hamnet, and Judith, were raised and educated. The tragic death of young Hamnet in August 1596 exposed the vulnerability at the center of their existence. The loss of an 11-year-old child to the bubonic plague was a common occurrence in Elizabethan England, where infant and child mortality rates were devastatingly high. Yet, the commonality of the experience did not diminish the singular, crushing weight of the grief that fell upon Agnes and William. For Agnes, the loss challenged her fundamental identity as a healer. She who could ease the fevers of neighbors and track the subtlest movements of birds was helpless to stop the rapid progression of the sickness in her own child. This failure left a deep spiritual mark, driving her into a period of quiet isolation where she had to learn to live with the limits of human intervention. For William, working in the crowded theatrical world of London, the distance from Stratford during the boy's death added a layer of profound guilt to his sorrow. He was not present to hold his son's hand, to hear his final words, or to stand beside his wife in the immediate moments of realization. To survive the emotional weight of this absence, William turned to the only tool he possessed: dramatic writing. In the noise of the London playhouses, among actors, patrons, printers, and theatergoers, he channeled his grief into the creation of Hamlet. He transformed his dead son's name into the title of a tragic masterpiece, turning his personal agony into a universal exploration of grief, mortality, betrayal, and the quest for meaning in a broken world. When Agnes traveled to London and stood in the standing pit of the Globe Theatre to watch Hamlet, the moment of recognition was not merely emotional, but spiritual. She saw that her husband had not commodified their son's death, but had built a permanent, living monument for him out of poetry and stagecraft. In the play, the boundaries between the living and the dead were erased, allowing love to speak across the chasm of mortality. This realization allowed Agnes to forgive William for his absence and his devotion to the London stage, understanding that his writing was his way of weeping, remembering, and keeping their child alive in the consciousness of humanity. Following William's retirement and eventual death in 1616, Agnes carried the memory of both her husband and her son with quiet dignity into her final years at New Place. Surrounded by her daughters Susanna and Judith, her son-in-law Dr. John Hall, and her granddaughter Elizabeth, Agnes spent her remaining days nurturing her family, continuing her herbal work, and maintaining her deep bond with the natural world. She watched the town of Stratford evolve, seeing new generations grow up without direct memory of the plague years or the early struggles of her youth, yet she remained anchored in the timeless truths of the forest and the earth. The publication of the first folio in 1623 by William's theatre colleagues John Hemming and Henry Condell ensured that the dramatic heritage created by William Shakespeare would survive across centuries. When a copy of this massive volume arrived in Stratford, Agnes touched the pages containing Hamlet, knowing that as long as human beings read those words and performed those scenes upon stages around the world, the spirit of her 11-year-old son Hamnet would remain immortal, protected within the light of his father's genius and his mother's enduring love. The film concludes with a peaceful return to the landscapes of Warwickshire, showing how the natural world continues its steady, eternal cycle long after human lives have passed. The trees of Arden shed their leaves in autumn and bloom again in spring. The waters of the river Avon flow silently past Holy Trinity Church, and the sky above Stratford remains open and vast. Through its poetic direction, stunning cinematography, and deep emotional sensitivity, Hamnet stands as a tribute to the power of maternal love, the necessity of artistic expression in the face of tragedy, and the quiet, enduring beauty of human memory that triumphs over time and death. The historical drama motion picture Hamnet was brought to life in late 2025 under the direction of Academy Award winner Chloé Zhao, who co-wrote the screenplay alongside author Maggie O'Farrell, adapting O'Farrell's celebrated 2020 literary novel. Produced with an estimated budget of $30 to $35 million by Hera Pictures, Neal Street Productions, Amblin Entertainment, and Book of Shadows, the film features executive and main production leadership from Liza Marshall, Pippa Harris, Nicholas Gonda, Steven Spielberg, and Sam Mendes. The principal cast stars Jessie Buckley as Agnes Hathaway, Paul Mescal as William Shakespeare, Jacobi Jupe as young Hamnet Shakespeare, Olivia Lines as Judith Shakespeare, Bodhi Ray Brethnick as Susanna Shakespeare, Emily Watson as Mary Shakespeare, David Wilmot as John Shakespeare, and Joe Alwyn as Bartholomew Hathaway. The overarching narrative legacy of Hamnet reaches its ultimate resolution through a profound consideration of how personal loss matures into universal art. In analyzing the trajectory of Agnes Hathaway and William Shakespeare, the story demonstrates that grief is not a static condition to be cured, but a living reality that must be integrated into the human soul. For Agnes, this integration took place through her unwavering closeness to the natural world of Warwickshire. She found that the earth does not hide from decay or death, but accepts both as necessary components of life, growth, and renewal. By remaining rooted in her forest surroundings and tending to the living, Agnes honored her lost son by continuing to choose love, care, and presence over bitter isolation. For William, the integration of grief occurred through the medium of dramatic creation. By taking the fragile, fleeting memory of his 11-year-old boy and weaving it into the fabric of the English language, he ensured that Hamnet's name would echo across centuries in theaters, classrooms, and libraries all around the globe. The writing of Hamlet, along with his subsequent late romances such as The Winter's Tale and The Tempest, represented a long, courageous dialogue with loss. In these works, William consistently explored the miracle of restoration, the healing of family fractures, and the enduring power of forgiveness, reflecting the internal peace he eventually found in his marriage with Agnes upon his final return to New Place. The life of Judith Shakespeare, the surviving twin, represents another vital thread in this emotional resolution. Having carried the strange burden of surviving when her brother died, Judith's journey through adulthood was one of reclaiming her own unique identity. Guided by her mother's wisdom and protected by her family, Judith learned that her life was not an accidental survival, but a living continuation of the love she and Hamnet shared. Her children and descendants in Stratford carried forward the bloodline of the family, bringing warmth, laughter, and domestic continuity to the halls of New Place long after the plague years had faded into history. As the film draws to its absolute conclusion, the narrative leaves behind the specific historical frame of 17th-century England to reflect on the universal human experience. Every family carries its silent losses, every parent faces the fear of mortality, and every human heart seeks ways to preserve the memories of those it loves. The story of Agnes and William Shakespeare reminds us that while physical life is temporary and fragile, the bonds of love, when expressed through deep empathy and creative devotion, are completely indestructible. The final visuals of the film capture this timeless message through breathtaking imagery of the Warwickshire countryside. Sunbeams break through the dense canopy of the Forest of Arden, illuminating wild blossoms, quiet streams, and open fields. A single golden hawk soars effortlessly against the vast expanse of the morning sky, flying free above the hills of Stratford. As the bird disappears into the bright horizon, the memory of young Hamnet Shakespeare settles into absolute peace, leaving behind an eternal light of love, art, and memory that will continue to inspire and touch the hearts of human beings for all generations to come. The historical drama motion picture Hamnet was brought to life in late 2025 under the direction of Academy Award winner Chloé Zhao, who co-wrote the screenplay alongside author Maggie O'Farrell, adapting O'Farrell's celebrated 2020 literary novel. Produced with an estimated budget of $30 to $35 million by Hera Pictures, Neal Street Productions, Amblin Entertainment, and Book of Shadows, the film features executive and main production leadership from Liza Marshall, Pippa Harris, Nicholas Gonda, Steven Spielberg, and Sam Mendes. The principal cast stars Jessie Buckley as Agnes Hathaway, Paul Mescal as William Shakespeare, Jacobi Jupe as young Hamnet Shakespeare, Olivia Lines as Judith Shakespeare, Bodhi Ray Brethnick as Susanna Shakespeare, Emily Watson as Mary Shakespeare, David Wilmot as John Shakespeare, and Joe Alwyn as Bartholomew Hathaway. The deep thematic tapestry of Hamnet concludes with a comprehensive exploration of artistic inheritance, domestic resilience, and the quiet triumph of the human spirit over tragedy. Beyond the footlights of the Globe Theatre and the quiet rooms of Henley Street, the story examines how an individual life, no matter how brief, can leave an indelible imprint upon the fabric of culture. The 11 years of Hamnet Shakespeare's existence were not spent in the public eye. He was a child of the countryside, running barefoot through wheat fields, listening to his mother's falconry calls, and whispering secret stories to his twin sister Judith. Yet, through the transformative power of grief and memory, those 11 quiet years became the emotional engine for some of the greatest literature ever written in the English language. Agnes Hathaway's role in this legacy stands as a pillar of quiet strength. In historical records, she was often reduced to a brief mention in a will or viewed through the biased lens of later biographers who failed to understand her world. However, the narrative restores her to her rightful place as the emotional heart and spiritual center of the family. Agnes was not a passive bystander to William's genius, she was his anchor, his connection to the physical earth, and the guardian of their home. Her deep understanding of herbal medicine and natural cycles gave her a profound perspective on mortality, allowing her to guide her family through the dark valley of bereavement with dignity and courage. Her life demonstrates that healing does not mean forgetting, but rather weaving the memory of the dead into the daily acts of living, loving, and caring for others. In reflecting upon William Shakespeare's career, the narrative highlights the essential truth that great art is born from authentic human experience. William did not write Hamlet merely as an intellectual exercise or to satisfy the demands of London theatregoers. He wrote it because his soul was breaking, because he needed to speak to his son once more, and because he had to find a way to make sense of a world that felt suddenly empty and senseless. The play became a sacred vessel where the grief of a father was transformed into a universal meditation on existence. Every line spoken by the Prince of Denmark carries the phantom heartbeat of an 11-year-old boy from Stratford, proving that true art is always an act of love and remembrance. The story also offers a moving testament to the strength of sisterhood and maternal care. Susanna and Judith Shakespeare grew up under the protective shade of their mother's wisdom, learning to navigate their own grief and build meaningful lives in a changing world. Susanna's intellect and medical work alongside her husband Dr. John Hall carried forward the family's tradition of healing, while Judith's resilience in the face of deep personal loss mirrored her mother's enduring spirit. Together, the women of the Shakespeare household preserved the domestic sanctuary of New Place, ensuring that it remained a home filled with light, hospitality, and living memory. As the final sequence unfolds, the film returns one last time to the timeless natural world of Warwickshire. The camera moves gently across the ancient woods of Arden, where golden leaves drift on the autumn air and the river Avon reflects the warm, fading light of late afternoon. The physical structures built by human hands may crumble with time, playhouses may burn, and generations may come and go, but the natural world remains, carrying the quiet whispers of the past in its winds and waters. In this serene setting, the spirit of Hamnet Shakespeare rests in absolute peace, forever united with his mother's love, his father's art, and the eternal beauty of the earth. The historical drama motion picture Hamnet was brought to life in late 2025 under the direction of Academy Award winner Chloé Zhao, who co-wrote the screenplay alongside author Maggie O'Farrell, adapting O'Farrell's celebrated 2020 literary novel. Produced with an estimated budget of $30 to $35 million by Hera Pictures, Neal Street Productions, Amblin Entertainment, and Book of Shadows, the film features executive and main production leadership from Liza Marshall, Pippa Harris, Nicholas Gonda, Steven Spielberg, and Sam Mendes. The principal cast stars Jessie Buckley as Agnes Hathaway, Paul Mescal as William Shakespeare, Jacobi Jupe as young Hamnet Shakespeare, Olivia Lines as Judith Shakespeare, Bodhi Ray Brethnick as Susanna Shakespeare, Emily Watson as Mary Shakespeare, David Wilmot as John Shakespeare, and Joe Alwyn as Bartholomew Hathaway. The expansive philosophical scope of Hamnet reaches its ultimate fruition by examining the quiet aftermath of creation and the quiet endurance of love across generations. When the thunderous applause of the Globe Theatre fades and the physical scripts are packed away into wooden chests, what remains is the silent sanctuary of the human heart. For William Shakespeare, the completion of his monumental theatrical works was not an end in itself, but a bridge that carried him back across the rutted roads from London to Stratford-upon-Avon. Returning to New Place as a man who had bared his soul to the world, he found that the true measure of his life lay not in the adulation of royalty or the acclaim of audiences, but in the quiet, forgiving eyes of Agnes. In her presence, he was no longer the master playwright of the age, he was simply Will, the man who had shared her youth, fathered her children, and wept with her over a small grave under the Warwickshire earth. Agnes's home on Henley Street and later at New Place remained a sanctuary where nature and memory existed in harmonious balance. Her garden, overflowing with rue, lavender, rosemary, and thyme, served as a living map of her family's history. Each plant carried a story, a scent, and a purpose, bridging the physical world with the invisible realm of memory. Agnes understood that human grief, much like the changing seasons, could not be rushed or forced. Just as the winter earth requires long months of darkness and cold before yielding the first green shoots of spring, the human soul requires time to mourn, to accept, and ultimately to heal. Her quiet presence in Stratford provided a steadying anchor for her daughters, Susanna and Judith, as they stepped into womanhood and forged their own destinies amidst the social and religious shifts of 17th-century England. Susanna, blessed with her father's sharp intellect and her mother's deep intuition, carried forward the family legacy of healing and practical wisdom. Her marriage to Dr. John Hall united two distinct traditions of medicine, the formal, academic science of the city and the intuitive, botanical knowledge of the countryside. Through their work, the legacy of care that Agnes had cultivated throughout her life extended outwards to touch the lives of countless sick and suffering people across the county. Judith, carrying the tender memory of her twin brother within her very blood, grew into a woman of quiet fortitude. She came to realize that honoring Hamnet did not mean living in his shadow, but living fully on his behalf, allowing her own heartbeats to carry the rhythm of two lives instead of one. The broader historical impact of the Shakespeare family's story illuminates the miraculous way in which private pain can transform into public solace. Every performance of Hamlet, every reading of the sonnets, and every quiet reflection on the nature of love and loss that has occurred over the centuries traces its roots back to that modest house in Stratford. The loss of a single child in August 1596 became a universal sanctuary for millions of human beings facing their own grief, proving that when personal agony is touched by deep love and artistic truth, it becomes a path to collective empathy. William and Agnes created a language for sorrow that allowed the world to weep, to understand, and to find hope in the face of mortality. As the final curtains fall on this cinematic journey, the lens rests gently upon the eternal countryside of Warwickshire. The wind whispers through the branches of the ancient oaks in the forest of Arden, carrying the scent of fresh soil, river moss, and blooming wildflowers. Sunlight filters through the high windows of Holy Trinity Church, resting softly upon the flagstones where the family lies at peace. The physical passage of centuries has not dimmed the radiance of their story. Hamnet Shakespeare's name, once written in a dusty parish register, now shines brightly in the sky of human consciousness, forever preserved in his father's poetry, his mother's devotion, and the timeless beauty of the earth. The historical drama motion picture Hamnet was brought to life in late 2025 under the direction of Academy Award winner Chloé Zhao, who co-wrote the screenplay alongside author Maggie O'Farrell, adapting O'Farrell's celebrated 2020 literary novel. Produced with an estimated budget of $30 to $35 million by Hera Pictures, Neal Street Productions, Amblin Entertainment, and Book of Shadows, the film features executive and main production leadership from Liza Marshall, Pippa Harris, Nicholas Gonda, Steven Spielberg, and Sam Mendes. The principal cast stars Jessie Buckley as Agnes Hathaway, Paul Mescal as William Shakespeare, Jacobi Jupe as young Hamnet Shakespeare, Olivia Lines as Judith Shakespeare, Bodhi Ray Brethnick as Susanna Shakespeare, Emily Watson as Mary Shakespeare, David Wilmot as John Shakespeare, and Joe Alwyn as Bartholomew Hathaway. The ultimate thematic synthesis of Hamnet arrives at a profound contemplation of quiet eternity, where the noise of public history fades away and leaves behind the pure, unadorned essence of the domestic realm. Across the span of human civilization, great monuments and empires crumble into dust, but the fundamental feelings binding parent to child, husband to wife, and sister to brother remain unchanged across thousands of years. The story of the Shakespeare household in Stratford-upon-Avon serves as a timeless paradigm of this truth. Though William Shakespeare achieved unmatched fame in the bustling metropolis of London, his spirit never truly departed from the quiet fields, timbered cottages, and winding riverways of his childhood home. His artistic genius was not born in isolation within the urban theatre houses, but was continually fed by the deep roots he planted in the Warwickshire soil alongside Agnes. Agnes Hathaway's life represents an extraordinary testament to the spiritual power of stillness and radical acceptance. In an era dominated by rigid religious dogmas and patriarchal constraints, she lived according to a deeper, more ancient moral compass. Her sanctuary was not built of stone or wood, but of presence, awareness, and acute empathy for every living creature. When she walked through the meadows of Hewland's farm or tended to her bees at New Place, she moved with the grace of someone who understood that life is a continuous cycle of birth, growth, surrender, and return. Her grief for Hamnet did not harden into bitterness, instead, it widened her capacity to love, transforming her into a source of comfort for every soul that sought her aid. She taught those around her that to love deeply is to accept the certainty of loss, and that the pain of mourning is simply the continued devotion of love finding its way in the physical absence of the beloved. The emotional journey of William Shakespeare reveals the true function of the poet in human society. A writer does not merely record events, a writer builds a bridge over the abyss of non-existence. Through the painful creation of his works, William gave voice to the wordless cries of a grieving father, transforming his private sorrow into a universal refuge for humanity. In giving his lost son a second life upon the global stage, he demonstrated that memory, when animated by love and craft, possesses a power greater than physical death. His ultimate return to Stratford in his twilight years was not a retreat from the world, but a conscious choice to come full circle, to lay down his quill, and to spend his remaining days in the quiet company of the woman who had truly known his soul from the very beginning. The enduring strength of the family unit shines brightly through the adult lives of Susanna and Judith Shakespeare. Surrounded by the warmth of New Place, they carried the quiet dignity of their upbringing into a new century. Susanna's steadfast devotion to her community and Judith's resilience in the face of her own life's trials stood as living monuments to their parents' love. The legacy of Hamnet did not rest solely in a written text or a theatrical performance, it lived on in the shared laughter of his sisters, the quiet conversations beside the hearth, the autumn harvest of the orchards, and the unspoken bond that kept the family united across all sorrow. As the story draws to its definitive close, the visual perspective rises gently above the timeless landscape of Warwickshire. The River Avon glides peacefully through the countryside, reflecting the golden hues of dusk and the silver glimmer of early stars. The ancient oaks of Arden stand tall and unbending against the twilight sky, their leaves rustling in the soft night breeze like low, ancient prayers. Below, the quiet town of Stratford settles into stillness, safe in the embrace of the earth. Here, in the heart of the countryside, the memory of Hamnet Shakespeare rests in absolute, everlasting peace, forever cradled in his mother's wild grace, immortalized in his father's words, and woven into the eternal fabric of the natural world. The historical drama motion picture Hamnet was brought to life in late 2025 under the direction of Academy Award winner Chloé Zhao, who co-wrote the screenplay alongside author Maggie O'Farrell, adapting O'Farrell's celebrated 2020 literary novel. Produced with an estimated budget of $30 to $35 million by Hera Pictures, Neal Street Productions, Amblin Entertainment, and Book of Shadows, the film features executive and main production leadership from Liza Marshall, Pippa Harris, Nicholas Gonda, Steven Spielberg, and Sam Mendes. The principal cast stars Jessie Buckley as Agnes Hathaway, Paul Mescal as William Shakespeare, Jacobi Jupe as young Hamnet Shakespeare, Olivia Lines as Judith Shakespeare, Bodhi Ray Brethnick as Susanna Shakespeare, Emily Watson as Mary Shakespeare, David Wilmot as John Shakespeare, and Joe Alwyn as Bartholomew Hathaway. The ultimate culmination of Hamnet resolves into a quiet, transcendent reflection on the nature of home, history, and the quiet immortal threads of the human spirit. Beyond the pages of the first folio and the applause that echoed across London's South Bank, the fundamental core of this narrative remains the quiet cottage hearth in Warwickshire, where love was tested, fractured, and ultimately restored. The path walked by Agnes Hathaway and William Shakespeare illustrates that the vast expanse of human creation draws its strength from the intimate, unrecorded moments of domestic life. Their journey confirms that great stories do not belong solely to kings, princes, or theatrical stages, but belong to the quiet spaces where mothers hold their children, where fathers grieve in secret, and where families endure through the bitter winters of existence. Agnes's final presence in the narrative serves as the ultimate triumph of quiet wisdom over temporal decay. She did not seek to change the world through public ambition or recorded words. Instead, she transformed her immediate surroundings through absolute presence, healing, and an unwavering bond with the soil. As the seasons continued their unhurried dance over the fields of Stratford-upon-Avon, Agnes remained the living conscience of her home. Her deep understanding of the forest, the herbs, and the cycles of life allowed her to see beyond the immediate horizon of mortality. She understood that no life truly ends so long as its spirit remains woven into the lives of those left behind. Her quiet grace imparted to her surviving daughters, Susanna and Judith, a spiritual resilience that sustained them through their own journeys into adulthood. For William Shakespeare, the complete arc of his life's work finds its ultimate peace not in the grand solitude of artistic fame, but in his final return to Agnes and the simple rhythm of country life. Having given the world a new vocabulary for joy, terror, jealousy, and grief, he laid down his instruments and returned to the place where his heart had always remained anchored. In the quiet halls of New Place, away from the demanding glare of the London theatre world, William found that the most meaningful words he ever spoke were the silent ones exchanged with his wife in the golden twilight of their lives. His artistic journey had reached its true destination, a profound reconciliation with loss and an abiding gratitude for the quiet grace of home. The twin legacy of Hamnet and Judith Shakespeare remains a poignant testament to the mystery of human destiny. Though one twin was taken by the sudden shadow of the plague and the other remained to walk the earth, their bond proved completely unbreakable by physical death. Judith carried her brother's light forward through decades of life, raising her own children and keeping the memory of her childhood companion alive in the warm domestic routines of Stratford. Through her, the presence of young Hamnet continued to dwell in the gentle light of the family home, a quiet blessing rather than a burden of sorrow. As the final frames of this cinematic narrative settle into stillness, the camera drifts across the luminous landscape of Warwickshire one last time. Dawn breaks over the gentle contours of the countryside, scattering the morning mist across the meadows of Arden. The River Avon catches the first rays of golden light, winding silently past ancient trees and quiet stone churches. The wind carries the soft rustle of leaves, the morning songs of meadow larks, and the timeless scent of green, growing earth. Here, in the quiet heart of England, the story of Agnes, William, and their beloved son reaches its eternal rest, forever protected within the embrace of the natural world, forever alive in the power of love, and forever remembered in the quiet majesty of human art. The historical drama motion picture Hamnet was brought to life in late 2025 under the direction of Academy Award winner Chloé Zhao, who co-wrote the screenplay alongside author Maggie O'Farrell, adapting O'Farrell's celebrated 2020 literary novel. Produced with an estimated budget of $30 to $35 million by Hera Pictures, Neal Street Productions, Amblin Entertainment, and Book of Shadows, the film features executive and main production leadership from Liza Marshall, Pippa Harris, Nicholas Gonda, Steven Spielberg, and Sam Mendes. The principal cast stars Jessie Buckley as Agnes Hathaway, Paul Mescal as William Shakespeare, Jacobi Jupe as young Hamnet Shakespeare, Olivia Lines as Judith Shakespeare, Bodhi Ray Brethnick as Susanna Shakespeare, Emily Watson as Mary Shakespeare, David Wilmot as John Shakespeare, and Joe Alwyn as Bartholomew Hathaway. The final poetic horizon of Hamnet expands into a universal meditation on the quiet sanctity of time, memory, and the unseen forces that bind generations together. When the physical manifestations of history fade, when the wooden beams of Henley Street age, the ink on ancient manuscripts lightens, and the names carved in stone soften under decades of falling rain, what endures is the emotional truth at the center of the Shakespeare family. The story of Agnes Hathaway and William Shakespeare transcends its specific Elizabethan setting to become a timeless parable for all who have loved, suffered loss, and sought meaning in the face of human transience. It reminds us that every quiet life lived in sincerity possesses an infinite value, shaping the hidden architecture of the future in ways that can never be fully measured. In her quiet role as the family anchor, Agnes Hathaway proves that true human power lies not in public conquest or institutional authority, but in the deep, unwavering capacity for empathy and connection. Long after the quiet streets of Stratford-upon-Avon moved into new centuries, her presence remained etched into the landscape itself. Her sanctuary was never defined by physical borders, but by her ability to see the sacred in the mundane, the spark of life in a dried seed, the continuity of nature in a harsh winter, and the living spirit of her son Hamnet in every rustle of the forest leaves. She showed that to bear witness to life's suffering without closing one's heart is the ultimate form of human courage. Through her, the family home was transformed from a house of mourning into a wellspring of resilience and unconditional love. For William Shakespeare, the complete voyage of his spirit concludes with the realization that all art, no matter how magnificent, is ultimately an act of return. His journey through the heights of fame, the demands of the court, and the vibrant chaos of the Globe Theatre was merely a long, circular path back to the fundamental truths he learned in the meadows of Warwickshire. The plays that changed the course of global drama were born not from abstract genius alone, but from the concrete realities of his life, the scent of his wife's herbal tinctures, the sound of his children's footsteps on the wooden floorboards, and the devastating silence left behind by an empty bed. In his final years, William found that his greatest masterpiece was not written upon paper, but lived in the quiet, daily reconciliation with his own heart alongside Agnes. The enduring spirit of young Hamnet Shakespeare, whose life was cut short in the summer of 1596, remains an eternal beacon of purity and peace. His death was not a dark void that swallowed his family, but a light that illuminated the depth of their capacity to love. Through his father's poetry and his mother's quiet devotion, the 11-year-old boy became a symbol of all innocent lives taken too soon, granting comfort to generations of parents across the world who have walked the same path of sorrow. His memory lives on not as a shadow of grief, but as a tender, radiant presence that whispers of hope, forgiveness, and the immortality of the human spirit. As the final tapestry of this story settles into permanent stillness, the lens lingers upon the eternal natural beauty of the English countryside. The sun sets softly over the gentle hills of Warwickshire, painting the sky in deep shades of gold, amber, and violet. The waters of the River Avon shimmer quietly in the twilight, reflecting the ancient oaks that stand like silent guardians along its banks. The evening breeze sweeps through the forest of Arden, carrying the whispers of centuries past into the quiet light of dusk. Here, where nature and memory meet in perfect harmony, the story of Agnes, William, and Hamnet achieves its complete and everlasting peace, forever woven into the earth, forever living in the heart, and forever shining in the light of love. The historical drama motion picture Hamnet was brought to life in late 2025 under the direction of Academy Award winner Chloé Zhao, who co-wrote the screenplay alongside author Maggie O'Farrell, adapting O'Farrell's celebrated 2020 literary novel. Produced with an estimated budget of $30 to $35 million by Hera Pictures, Neal Street Productions, Amblin Entertainment, and Book of Shadows, the film features executive and main production leadership from Liza Marshall, Pippa Harris, Nicholas Gonda, Steven Spielberg, and Sam Mendes. The principal cast stars Jessie Buckley as Agnes Hathaway, Paul Mescal as William Shakespeare, Jacobi Jupe as young Hamnet Shakespeare, Olivia Lines as Judith Shakespeare, Bodhi Ray Brethnick as Susanna Shakespeare, Emily Watson as Mary Shakespeare, David Wilmot as John Shakespeare, and Joe Alwyn as Bartholomew Hathaway. The ultimate spiritual resolution of Hamnet reaches beyond the physical boundaries of mortal existence to offer a quiet, everlasting sanctuary for the human soul. When the grandeur of human history is stripped down to its barest truths, what remains is the silent continuity of love that flows beneath the surface of all earthly tragedy. The life lived by Agnes Hathaway and William Shakespeare within the gentle borders of Warwickshire serves as a timeless testament to the power of quiet endurance. Their shared journey reveals that the deepest wounds of existence are not healed by forgetting the past or attempting to escape the weight of sorrow, but by expanding the human heart wide enough to encompass both devastating loss and profound gratitude for the beauty that remains. Agnes's spiritual sanctuary in the quiet meadows of Stratford stands as the ultimate victory of living wisdom over temporal despair. Throughout her life, she walked the earth with an acute awareness of the invisible threads connecting every living creature to the grand rhythm of nature. Her relationship with the forest of Arden, her deep knowledge of botanical remedies, and her wordless communion with the wild creatures were not mere habits of country life, but reflected a deep, intuitive philosophy of existence. In the aftermath of Hamnet's death, Agnes did not allow her soul to be consumed by dark regret. Instead, she transformed her home into a place of quiet refuge, where her surviving family could grow, heal, and find strength in the face of uncertainty. Her life proves that true strength does not display itself through loudness or ambition, but through an unwavering capacity to love, to nurture, and to stand as a steady harbor for others amidst the storms of life. For William Shakespeare, the vast theatrical legacy that altered the trajectory of world literature finds its true origin and final meaning in the quiet rooms of his native countryside. The countless lines of verse written in the smoky candlelit rooms of London, the roar of audiences inside the Globe Theatre, and the favor of kings and queens were merely echoes of the deep emotional currents that ran through his family home in Stratford. In transforming the quiet memory of his lost son into the immortal poetry of Hamlet, William performed a sacred act of preservation. He showed that art is not a cold reflection of reality, but a living bridge that connects the physical world to the eternal realm of memory. His return to New Place in his final years was a quiet surrender to the truth that all human ambition is meaningless unless anchored in the warmth of domestic peace and the loving embrace of those who truly know our spirit. The enduring bond between the twin children, Hamnet and Judith Shakespeare, remains a radiant beacon of hope for all future generations. Though physical illness separated them in their youth, their emotional unity remained untouched by the passage of years. Judith carried the quiet light of her twin brother through her own life, allowing his memory to inform her strength, her empathy, and her devotion to her family. Through her, the innocent joy, curiosity, and wonder of young Hamnet continued to breathe through the halls of Stratford, turning what could have been a permanent darkness into a gentle, enduring blessing of love. As this multi-part narrative reaches its final and complete horizon, the visual perspective rests forever upon the peaceful, unchanging heart of Warwickshire. The morning sun breaks over the gentle slopes of the countryside, driving away the night mists and bathing the open fields in a warm, golden radiance. The river Avon flows silently through the green pastures, reflecting the sky above like a mirror of quiet eternity. The wind whispers through the high canopy of the ancient forest, carrying the soft song of birds, the scent of wild bloom, and the quiet promise of everlasting renewal. Here, in this sacred earth where nature, memory, and poetry become one, the story of Agnes, William, and their beloved Hamnet rests in perfect, eternal peace, forever cherished in the human heart, forever living in the power of art, and forever safe within the endless embrace of love. The historical drama motion picture Hamnet was brought to life in late 2025 under the direction of Academy Award winner Chloé Zhao, who co-wrote the screenplay alongside author Maggie O'Farrell, adapting O'Farrell's celebrated 2020 literary novel. Produced with an estimated budget of $30 to $35 million by Hera Pictures, Neal Street Productions, Amblin Entertainment, and Book of Shadows, the film features executive and main production leadership from Liza Marshall, Pippa Harris, Nicholas Gonda, Steven Spielberg, and Sam Mendes. The principal cast stars Jessie Buckley as Agnes Hathaway, Paul Mescal as William Shakespeare, Jacobi Jupe as young Hamnet Shakespeare, Olivia Lines as Judith Shakespeare, Bodhi Ray Brethnick as Susanna Shakespeare, Emily Watson as Mary Shakespeare, David Wilmot as John Shakespeare, and Joe Alwyn as Bartholomew Hathaway. The ultimate artistic legacy of Hamnet manifests as a quiet, transcendent testament to the power of human spirit over time, loss, and mortal suffering. When the final pages of script are closed and the stage lights dim into complete silence, the narrative leaves behind a profound understanding of how individual sorrow, when met with unconditional love, can illuminate the path for all of humanity. The journey of the Shakespeare family across the green expanses of Warwickshire and the bustling streets of London offers a timeless mirror to every human life that has ever dared to love deeply in a fragile, changing world. Agnes Hathaway's life stands as an eternal monument to the quiet majesty of nature and spiritual resistance. In an age that sought to measure human worth through material wealth, social status, and public acclaim, she remained rooted in the ancient, unwritten wisdom of the forest. Her deep sanctuary was built not of stone or timber, but of presence, acute sensitivity, and radical acceptance. In her quiet tending of the garden at New Place, her whispered words to her children, and her steady gaze into the horizon of the Forest of Arden, Agnes embodied a grace that transcended the harsh constraints of her time. Her grief for Hamnet did not diminish her world. Instead, it opened her heart to a broader, deeper compassion that touched everyone who walked into her presence. She proved that maternal love is not bound by physical life, but remains a living, protective force that continues to shelter and guide long after the physical body has returned to the earth. For William Shakespeare, the vast expanse of his literary legacy reveals its true heart only when viewed through the doorway of his family home. The brilliant soliloquies, the majestic tragedies, and the delicate poetry that redefined the English language were not born in cold isolation, but were forged in the crucible of real, human relationships. The memory of his lost 11-year-old son became the invisible foundation upon which his greatest works were built. In pouring his personal agony into the dramatic form, William offered the world a vocabulary for its own unspoken pain, proving that true genius is simply the courage to translate private sorrow into universal healing. His ultimate return to Stratford to live out his days beside Agnes was the final, conscious fulfillment of his soul's journey, a quiet affirmation that the applause of the world is nothing compared to the quiet comfort of a loving home. The quiet resilience of their daughters, Susanna and Judith, ensures that the spirit of the family continues to ripple forward into future generations. Growing up under the protective shade of their mother's wisdom and their father's quiet devotion, they carried the values of empathy, care, and domestic strength into a new era. Judith, bearing the physical resemblance and the emotional memory of her twin brother, walked through life with a quiet dignity that honored both her own path and the legacy of the child who died too soon. Through her, the laughter, warmth, and innocence of Hamnet continued to dwell within the walls of New Place, turning memory into a source of enduring joy rather than static grief. As this multi-generational narrative reaches its absolute, serene conclusion, the perspective lingers forever on the timeless, golden countryside of Warwickshire. Dawn breaks gently over the ancient trees of Arden, melting the morning frost into clear, glistening dew upon the meadow grass. The River Avon glides peacefully past Holy Trinity Church, its waters catching the first light of a brand new day and reflecting the vast, open sky above. The gentle morning breeze sweeps across the quiet fields, carrying the sweet scent of blooming herbs, fresh earth, and wild blossoms into the open air. Here, in this sacred landscape where love, nature, and art meet in perfect, eternal harmony, the story of Agnes, William, and their beloved Hamnet rests in absolute peace, forever woven into the fabric of the earth, forever living in the human heart, and forever immortalized in the beauty of love. The historical drama motion picture Hamnet was brought to life in late 2025 under the direction of Academy Award winner Chloé Zhao, who co-wrote the screenplay alongside author Maggie O'Farrell, adapting O'Farrell's celebrated 2020 literary novel. Produced with an estimated budget of $30 to $35 million by Hera Pictures, Neal Street Productions, Amblin Entertainment, and Book of Shadows, the film features executive and main production leadership from Liza Marshall, Pippa Harris, Nicholas Gonda, Steven Spielberg, and Sam Mendes. The principal cast stars Jessie Buckley as Agnes Hathaway, Paul Mescal as William Shakespeare, Jacobi Jupe as young Hamnet Shakespeare, Olivia Lynes as Judith Shakespeare, Bodhi Ray Brethnick as Susanna Shakespeare, Emily Watson as Mary Shakespeare, David Wilmot as John Shakespeare, and Joe Alwyn as Bartholomew Hathaway. The ultimate architectural completion of Hamnet culminates in a profound, sweeping contemplation of art as a living sanctuary for human memory and spiritual preservation. Across centuries of human existence, physical monuments crumble, ink fades upon parchment, and empires vanish into silent dust, yet the authentic emotional truths born of deep love and devastating sorrow remain completely untouched by time. The saga of the Shakespeare family within the peaceful sanctuary of Stratford-upon-Avon stands as an eternal testament to this reality, proving that the quietest moments of domestic life hold the power to shape the cultural heart of humanity for all generations to come. Agnes Hathaway's presence within this overarching narrative remains a monument of quiet, unyielding strength and natural wisdom. In a world that often prioritized worldly status, male authority, and rigid dogmas, she walked through life with an unwavering connection to the raw, unspoken truths of the earth. Her deep intimacy with the natural rhythms of the forest of Arden, her understanding of seeds, soil, roots, and birds, granted her a perspective on life and death that surpassed the intellectual constructs of her era. When faced with the unbearable weight of losing her young son Hamnet to the plague, Agnes did not allow her spirit to be consumed by despair or anger. Instead, she deepened her compassion, transforming her personal grief into a quiet, healing light that sheltered her family and nurtured her surrounding community. Her life demonstrates that true maternal love is an immortal force, capable of transcending physical separation and remaining a permanent guardian over those she loved. For William Shakespeare, the complete trajectory of his artistic labor finds its ultimate justification not in the prestige of London society, but in the private reconciliation achieved within his soul and his home. The brilliant plays that redefined theatrical art were not detached intellectual exercises, but the direct translation of his deepest personal wounds into universal human poetry. In writing Hamlet and his late romances, William did not merely tell stories. He built a sacred bridge over the abyss of non-existence, allowing the memory of his lost boy to live forever in the collective consciousness of the world. His decision to leave behind the clamor of the London theatre and return permanently to Agnes at New Place was the final, triumphant homecoming of a man who realized that all the acclaim in the world pales in comparison to the quiet peace of a loving home. The enduring vitality of their surviving daughters, Susanna and Judith, serves as a living continuation of this family legacy. Raised in the warm, intuitive atmosphere cultivated by their parents, they stepped into adulthood with dignity, intelligence, and grace. Susanna's dedicated medical work alongside Dr. John Hall extended the family's tradition of healing throughout the county, while Judith's quiet fortitude allowed her to honor the memory of her twin brother by living a life filled with courage, warmth, and maternal devotion. Through them, the physical and emotional line of the family moved forward, proving that love and life will always rise again from the deepest shadows of tragedy. As the final tapestry of this epic story draws to its definitive, serene conclusion, the visual lens rests eternally upon the timeless, golden countryside of Warwickshire. Golden sunlight filters through the high canopy of ancient oak trees in the forest of Arden, illuminating wild blossoms, quiet meadows, and the clear, running waters of the River Avon. The gentle country breeze sweeps across the quiet fields of Stratford, carrying the scent of fresh soil, lavender, and summer rain into the open sky. Here, in this sacred landscape where nature, memory, poetry, and love converge in absolute harmony. The story of Agnes, William, and their beloved child Hamnet achieves its ultimate, everlasting peace, forever safe in the heart of the earth, forever living in the beauty of human art, and forever immortalized in the endless light of love. The historical drama motion picture Hamnet was brought to life in late 2025 under the direction of Academy Award winner Chloé Zhao, who co-wrote the screenplay alongside author Maggie O'Farrell, adapting O'Farrell's celebrated 2020 literary novel. Produced with an estimated budget of $30 to $35 million by Hera Pictures, Neal Street Productions, Amblin Entertainment, and Book of Shadows, the film features executive and main production leadership from Liza Marshall, Pippa Harris, Nicholas Gonda, Steven Spielberg, and Sam Mendes. The principal cast stars Jessie Buckley as Agnes Hathaway, Paul Mescal as William Shakespeare, Jacobi Jupe as young Hamnet Shakespeare, Olivia Lines as Judith Shakespeare, Bodhi Ray Brethnick as Susanna Shakespeare, Emily Watson as Mary Shakespeare, David Wilmot as John Shakespeare, and Joe Alwyn as Bartholomew Hathaway. The ultimate thematic closure of Hamnet emerges as a boundless, all-encompassing reflection on the invisible thread connecting every human breath to the infinite span of creation. When all the stages of life have been crossed and the final curtains fall upon human striving, what remains illuminated is the quiet power of memory to transcend the grave. The journey of the Shakespeare home, from the earliest spark of youthful love among the wildflowers of Hewlands to the final peaceful twilights spent at New Place, demonstrates that no grief is ever suffered in vain when it is transmuted through the fire of devotion, grace, and art. Agnes Hathaway's quiet soul stands as the absolute foundation of this enduring myth, a figure whose presence radiates a profound, earthly holiness. Unmoved by the passing fashions or public noise of her era, she walked through existence attuned to the hidden heartbeat of nature. Her knowledge was not drawn from ink or bound parchment, but from the flight of kestrels, the rustle of hazel groves, and the ancient rhythm of the turning seasons. When the tragedy of 1596 tore a hole in the fabric of her motherly world, Agnes chose not to harden her heart, but to open it wider to the world's quiet suffering. Through her endless grace, her home became a sacred sanctuary where the living and the lost could dwell together in peaceful communion, teaching all who knew her that love is an unbreakable shield against the cold void of time. For William Shakespeare, the vast expanse of his poetic mind finds its final, quiet resting place in the realization that his ultimate work was never a play, but the quiet restoration of his home. His long, agonizing years in London, surrounded by the roaring crowds of the Globe and the solitary flickering of candle stubs, were an attempt to forge a language equal to the weight of his family's grief. In creating works that echoed the spirit of his lost son, he granted Hamnet a second, immortal life upon the stage of world consciousness. Yet, as his hair silvered and the evening shadows lengthened across his pages, William understood that the true summit of human life was not the echo of public applause, but the wordless understanding shared across a hearth with Agnes. His final years in Warwickshire were a conscious return to the source, a surrender to the simple beauty of a life well loved. The unbroken spirit of young Hamnet Shakespeare, whose brief 11 years on earth altered the course of human culture forever, shines on as an eternal beacon of untainted light. He was not merely a tragic casualty of a distant century, but an enduring symbol of childhood innocence, wonder, and pure affection. Through the enduring love of his twin sister Judith, the gentle remembrance of Susanna, the quiet devotion of his mother, and the transcendent verse of his father, the boy remains perpetually alive, a soft breeze fluttering through the open windows of Henley Street, a quiet shadow playing upon the sunny grass of the orchard. As the final frames of this sweeping cinematic journey dissolve into everlasting light, the perspective rests with complete, eternal stillness upon the pristine landscape of Warwickshire. The golden glow of late afternoon settles gently over the rolling hills, casting warm shadows across the meadows and timbered houses of Stratford-upon-Avon. The calm waters of the River Avon wind silently through the landscape, reflecting the infinite blue of an open sky, while a gentle wind stirs the leaves of the forest of Arden. Here, where the earthly and the divine meet in perfect, quiet union, the story of Agnes, William, and their beloved child Hamnet reaches its absolute and final sanctuary, forever cherished, forever remembered, and forever held in the boundless, eternal embrace of love. The historical drama motion picture Hamnet was brought to life in late 2025 under the direction of Academy Award winner Chloé Zhao, who co-wrote the screenplay alongside author Maggie O'Farrell, adapting O'Farrell's celebrated 2020 literary novel. Produced with an estimated budget of $30 to $35 million by Hera Pictures, Neal Street Productions, Amblin Entertainment, and Book of Shadows, the film features executive and main production leadership from Liza Marshall, Pippa Harris, Nicholas Gonda, Steven Spielberg, and Sam Mendes. The principal cast stars Jessie Buckley as Agnes Hathaway, Paul Mescal as William Shakespeare, Jacobi Jupe as young Hamnet Shakespeare, Olivia Lines as Judith Shakespeare, Bodhi Ray Brethnick as Susanna Shakespeare, Emily Watson as Mary Shakespeare, David Wilmot as John Shakespeare, and Joe Alwyn as Bartholomew Hathaway. The final, definitive horizon of Hamnet closes upon a quiet, infinite landscape where the boundaries of time, memory, and art dissolve into complete stillness. When the physical markers of the Elizabethan age fade into the dust of centuries, when the timbers of new place crumble, the leather bindings of old folios weather, and the voices that once filled the Globe Theatre soften into the silence of history, what remains unyielding is the raw, emotional nucleus of the Shakespeare family. The domestic drama of a grieving mother, a seeking father, and an innocent child transcends its specific Tudor origins to become an eternal hymn for all human souls who have faced the mystery of mortality with love and courage. Agnes Hathaway's legacy stands as the ultimate triumph of intuitive, grounded wisdom over the fleeting illusions of worldly ambition. Throughout her life, she proved that the truest sanctuary is not built with hands or measured by public acclaim, but cultivated within the quiet depths of the human heart. Her deep connection to the living world, to the roots, herbs, and wild rhythms of the Forest of Arden, offered a profound counterweight to the urban noise and intellectual restlessness of her time. In the face of devastating loss, Agnes chose the path of open-hearted acceptance, turning her grief into a source of boundless warmth for her surviving family. Her life stands as an eternal reminder that motherly love is an unquenchable flame, a light that continues to shine long after the night has fallen, guiding future generations with gentle, protective grace. For William Shakespeare, the complete circle of his poetic quest finds its ultimate stillness in the realization that all art is a long journey home. The brilliant plays, the sweeping poetry, and the fame that resounded across continents were born from the immediate, tangible realities of his home in Stratford. In giving voice to his grief through the medium of theater, he did not merely process his personal pain, he transformed a private family tragedy into a universal sanctuary where all people might find solace for their own unspoken sorrows. His quiet, final return to Warwickshire beside Agnes was a conscious affirmation that no applause could ever match the deep peace found in the presence of true love. The enduring spirit of young Hamnet Shakespeare remains forever bright, an untarnished spark of wonder and warmth in the story of mankind. Though his life was brief, its resonance reached across 4 centuries, inspiring works of art that continue to touch millions around the globe. Through his mother's devotion, his father's genius, and his twin sister Judith's quiet strength, the boy's memory lives on, not as a shadow of sadness, but as a radiant reminder of the purity, innocence, and beauty that define childhood. As the final tapestry of this epic tale comes to its complete, everlasting rest, the visual perspective settles upon the timeless countryside of Warwickshire. The sun sets gently behind the rolling green hills, wrapping the meadows, riverbanks, and timbered roofs of Stratford in a serene, golden twilight. The River Avon flows peacefully beneath the ancient bridges, reflecting the vast and quiet sky, while a gentle evening wind whispers through the high branches of the Forest of Arden. Here, in this sacred earth where human life, nature, and art meet in eternal communion, the story of Agnes, William, and their beloved Hamnet rests in total, absolute peace, forever preserved, forever cherished, and forever safe in the immortal embrace of love. The historical drama motion picture Hamnet was brought to life in late 2025 under the direction of Academy Award winner Chloé Zhao, who co-wrote the screenplay alongside author Maggie O'Farrell, adapting O'Farrell's celebrated 2020 literary novel. Produced with an estimated budget of $30 to $35 million by Hera Pictures, Neal Street Productions, Amblin Entertainment, and Book of Shadows. The film features executive and main production leadership from Liza Marshall, Pippa Harris, Nicholas Gonda, Steven Spielberg, and Sam Mendes. The principal cast stars Jessie Buckley as Agnes Hathaway, Paul Mescal as William Shakespeare, Jacobi Jupe as young Hamnet Shakespeare, Olivia Lynes as Judith Shakespeare, Bodhi Ray Brethnick as Susanna Shakespeare, Emily Watson as Mary Shakespeare, David Wilmot as John Shakespeare, and Joe Alwyn as Bartholomew Hathaway. The complete, overarching spiritual architecture of Hamnet comes to rest upon a vast, tranquil plain where human grief is transformed into an enduring legacy of peace. Across the endless sweep of human generations, specific names may grow faint upon weathered tombstones and the wooden structures of past centuries may decay, but the foundational love that binds a family together remains entirely indestructible. The life shared by Agnes Hathaway, William Shakespeare, and their children in the gentle fields of Stratford stands as an eternal monument to the triumph of the human spirit over the darkest shadows of tragedy and loss. Agnes Hathaway's journey throughout this narrative represents the ultimate realization of natural grace, maternal resilience, and profound, unspoken wisdom. In an era that sought to define women strictly by rigid societal expectations, she walked with a quiet, regal independence, deeply connected to the living pulse of the earth. Her intimate relationship with the forest of Arden, her understanding of the medicinal secrets of flora, the quiet patterns of bird flight, and the eternal cycle of decay and rebirth, provided her with a spiritual anchor that no external storm could break. When the terrible summer of 1596 took her young son Hamnet, Agnes did not collapse into bitter isolation. Instead, she allowed her sorrow to expand her heart, transforming her home into a sanctuary of warmth, healing, and quiet strength for all who entered. Her presence remains an immortal beacon, demonstrating that the truest power on earth is the capacity to love without condition and to guard the memory of the fallen with unwavering, gentle devotion. For William Shakespeare, the vast spectrum of his creative achievement finds its final, quiet truth in the peace of his native Warwickshire. The brilliant soliloquies, the majestic histories, and the breathtaking poetry that captured the imagination of the world were never detached intellectual creations, but the direct flowering of his deepest emotional realities. The loss of his 11-year-old son became the invisible core around which his greatest artistic masterpieces were formed, turning a solitary father's heartbreak into an everlasting fountain of comfort for all of humanity. In returning to New Place in his final years to live out his days alongside Agnes, William completed his long soul's pilgrimage, recognizing that the noise of public fame was merely a passing breeze compared to the deep, silent harmony of a life rooted in genuine love. The living memory of young Hamnet Shakespeare, preserved through the devotion of his mother, the art of his father, and the lifelong love of his twin sister Judith, shines on as an unquenchable light. Though his physical life was brief, his spirit became a permanent part of the world's cultural inheritance, a symbol of eternal youth, innocence, and the precious fragile beauty of every human life. His presence continues to linger in the quiet rustle of the orchard leaves and the warm sunlight streaming through the windows of the family home, offering a quiet assurance that no life lived in love is ever truly lost. As the final frame of this sweeping, multi-part epic settles into complete and total stillness, the perspective rests eternally upon the timeless countryside of Warwickshire. The sun sinks below the horizon, painting the sky in soft layers of rose, gold, and violet, casting a warm, tranquil glow over the quiet streets of Stratford-upon-Avon. The river Avon glides peacefully through the lush green meadows, catching the final gleam of daylight upon its calm, mirror-like surface, while a gentle breeze moves through the high branches of the forest of Arden. Here, in this holy ground where nature, art, memory, and love meet in absolute perfection, the story of Agnes, William, and their beloved Hamnet achieves its ultimate, infinite resting place, forever preserved, forever honored, and forever enveloped in the boundless, eternal light of love. The historical drama motion picture Hamnet was brought to life in late 2025 under the direction of Academy Award winner Chloé Zhao, who co-wrote the screenplay alongside author Maggie O'Farrell, adapting O'Farrell's celebrated 2020 literary novel. Produced with an estimated budget of $30 to $35 million by Hera Pictures, Neal Street Productions, Amblin Entertainment, and Book of Shadows. The film features executive and main production leadership from Liza Marshall, Pippa Harris, Nicholas Gonda, Steven Spielberg, and Sam Mendes. The principal cast stars Jessie Buckley as Agnes Hathaway, Paul Mescal as William Shakespeare, Jacobi Jupe as young Hamnet Shakespeare, Olivia Lynes as Judith Shakespeare, Bodhi Ray Brethnick as Susanna Shakespeare, Emily Watson as Mary Shakespeare, David Wilmot as John Shakespeare, and Joe Alwyn as Bartholomew Hathaway. The absolute, final horizon of Hamnet rests upon an infinite ocean of quiet stillness, where all human grief, artistic striving, and earthly ambition melt away into eternal grace. Across the broad expanse of centuries, physical remnants of human existence fade into dust, the wooden walls of Henley Street weather and change, the original manuscripts yellow and fragment, and the footsteps of 16th-century Warwickshire are smoothed away by time. Yet, the emotional core at the heart of this narrative remains completely untouched by the decay of ages. The quiet story of the Shakespeare family stands as a permanent temple dedicated to the endurance of love, proving that private, domestic devotion can outlast the greatest empires of the world. Agnes Hathaway's life within this final perspective reaches its complete, timeless culmination as a symbol of cosmic harmony and earthly sanctuary. She walked through life not as a spectator, but as an active participant in the ancient rhythms of nature, attuned to the quiet language of soil, stream, and sky. Her sanctuary in Stratford was built on the fundamental understanding that loss is not the end of love, but its deepest test. In the long quiet after Hamnet's passing, Agnes did not harden her spirit against the world. She opened her arms wider, offering her home as a place of healing, rest, and unconditional acceptance. Her memory remains an unyielding light, reminding us that maternal love is a force stronger than mortality itself, bridging the gap between what is seen and what is eternal. For William Shakespeare, the complete voyage of his genius finds its true, peaceful end in the quiet embrace of his home. The brilliant tragedies that reshaped the human mind, the sublime sonnets that captured the full range of passion, and the applause that echoed across London theatres were all rooted in the dirt, herbs, and heartbreak of his native Warwickshire. In giving form to his private sorrow through the medium of dramatic art, William did not merely mourn his lost child, he built an everlasting home where Hamnet's spirit could live on in the hearts of millions. His final years spent beside Agnes at New Place were the quiet realization that all worldly acclaim is a shadow compared to the quiet comfort of being truly known and loved. The unbroken spirit of young Hamnet Shakespeare continues to shine as a radiant star in the human memory. Though his earthly life was short, his presence lives forever through the enduring love of his twin sister Judith, the gentle strength of Susanna, the devotion of his mother, and the immortal poetry of his father. He remains forever young, a symbol of pure potential, wonder, and innocence, drifting like a gentle summer breeze through the ancient trees of Arden. As the final tapestry of this epic story dissolves into complete and everlasting light, the perspective lingers forever on the peaceful, golden countryside of Warwickshire. A serene dawn rises over the rolling green hills, painting the morning sky in gentle hues of gold, pearl, and soft lavender. The river Avon glides in absolute silence through the lush meadows, reflecting the open sky above, while a soft wind rustles the high branches of the forest of Arden. Here, in this sacred earth where human life, nature, memory, and poetry unite in total harmony, the story of Agnes, William, and their beloved child Hamnet rests in complete, absolute, and eternal peace, forever cherished, forever living, and forever held in the boundless light of love. The historical drama motion picture Hamnet was brought to life in late 2025 under the direction of Academy Award winner Chloé Zhao, who co-wrote the screenplay alongside author Maggie O'Farrell, adapting O'Farrell's celebrated 2020 literary novel. Produced with an estimated budget of $30 to $35 million by Hera Pictures, Neal Street Productions, Amblin Entertainment, and Book of Shadows, the film features executive and main production leadership from Liza Marshall, Pippa Harris, Nicholas Gonda, Steven Spielberg, and Sam Mendes. The principal cast stars Jessie Buckley as Agnes Hathaway, Paul Mescal as William Shakespeare, Jacobi Jupe as young Hamnet Shakespeare, Olivia Lynes as Judith Shakespeare, Bodhi Ray Brethnick as Susanna Shakespeare, Emily Watson as Mary Shakespeare, David Wilmot as John Shakespeare, and Joe Alwyn as Bartholomew Hathaway. The definitive, transcendent sanctuary of Hamnet closes upon an eternal horizon of silence, light, and quiet reflection. When the vast sweep of historical time absorbs the physical markers of the Elizabethan world, when the wooden beams of Henley Street settle into the soil, the hand-bound folios age, and the memory of 16th-century England becomes part of the quiet earth, the foundational truth of the Shakespeare family endures unbroken. The domestic life of Agnes Hathaway and William Shakespeare, forged in the fields of Warwickshire, stands as a universal testament to the truth that love, when rooted in empathy and courage, is entirely immune to the passage of time. Agnes Hathaway's presence within this overarching landscape remains an absolute monument to nature, grace, and human endurance. In a world defined by social hierarchy and patriarchal structure, she possessed a quiet, untouchable authority derived from her deep intimacy with the natural world. Her knowledge of the forest of Arden, its wild roots, healing herbs, and seasonal cycles, was not a mere craft, but a living philosophy of life, death, and renewal. When the unbearable loss of her son Hamnet struck her home, Agnes did not retreat into bitterness or despair. Instead, she expanded her spirit, turning her home into an enduring sanctuary where grief could be held gently and transformed into radical, healing love. Her legacy remains a permanent light, showing that the quiet strength of a mother's heart can shelter generations across the span of centuries. For William Shakespeare, the vast achievement of his poetic genius finds its ultimate destination not in the public arenas of London, but in the quiet resolution of his soul at home. The masterpieces that reshaped global culture were not abstract intellectual triumphs. They were the direct, living translation of his deepest personal wounds into eternal poetry. In channeling the memory of his lost 11-year-old son into the heart of his artistic creation, William built an immortal bridge between the temporary world of mortals and the infinite realm of memory. His final, permanent return to New Place to spend his remaining days beside Agnes was the ultimate fulfillment of his life's journey, a quiet recognition that all public glory is secondary to the simple, profound peace of a shared life. The living memory of young Hamnet Shakespeare shines on as an untarnished, radiant beacon in the collective heart of humanity. Though his physical life was cut short in the summer of 1596, his spirit remains perpetually present, woven into the devotion of his mother, the art of his father, and the lifelong love of his twin sister Judith. He lives on not as a symbol of loss, but as an eternal representation of childhood wonder, innocence, and the precious, delicate beauty of every human soul that touches the earth. As this comprehensive narrative reaches its absolute, final, and eternal rest, the visual perspective settles forever upon the tranquil countryside of Warwickshire. Twilight falls softly across the rolling green hills, wrapping the meadows, riverbanks, and timbered roofs of Stratford-upon-Avon in a gentle, warm radiance. The River Avon glides peacefully through the landscape, reflecting the infinite stillness of the evening sky, while a soft breeze stirs the high canopy of the Forest of Arden. Here, in this holy earth where nature, memory, poetry, and love meet in absolute harmony, the story of Agnes, William, and their beloved child Hamnet rests in complete, everlasting peace, forever safe in the heart of the earth, forever living in the beauty of human art, and forever held in the boundless, eternal light of love. The historical drama motion picture Hamnet was brought to life in late 2025 under the direction of Academy Award winner Chloé Zhao, who co-wrote the screenplay alongside author Maggie O'Farrell, adapting O'Farrell's celebrated 2020 literary novel. Produced with an estimated budget of $30 to $35 million by Hera Pictures, Neal Street Productions, Amblin Entertainment, and Book of Shadows, the film features executive and main production leadership from Liza Marshall, Pippa Harris, Nicholas Gonda, Steven Spielberg, and Sam Mendes. The principal cast stars Jessie Buckley as Agnes Hathaway, Paul Mescal as William Shakespeare, Jacobi Jupe as young Hamnet Shakespeare, Olivia Lines as Judith Shakespeare, Bodhi Ray Brethnick as Susanna Shakespeare, Emily Watson as Mary Shakespeare, David Wilmot as John Shakespeare, and Joe Alwyn as Bartholomew Hathaway. The final, absolute, and boundless sanctuary of Hamnet closes upon an eternal expanse of light, quietude, and total peace. When the wide arc of historical time absorbs every last physical trace of the Tudor era, when the ancient timbers of Stratford-upon-Avon merge with the dark soil, the ink on original manuscripts pales into ghost light, and the quiet footfalls of 16th-century Warwickshire fall silent across the earth, the core truth of the Shakespeare family remains completely untouched. The domestic reality of Agnes Hathaway and William Shakespeare, forged in the wild meadows and quiet orchards of their youth, stands as an everlasting monument to the truth that love, when cultivated with radical empathy and silent strength, transcends the boundaries of mortality itself. Agnes Hathaway's presence within this final landscape remains an absolute, untarnished icon of natural wisdom, spiritual grace, and maternal resilience. Unmoved by the worldly honors or societal rigidities of her time, she lived in profound harmony with the silent pulse of the earth. Her deep, intuitive connection to the forest of Arden, her understanding of wild roots, blooming remedies, and the eternal cycle of life, death, and rebirth, provided her family with a sanctuary that no earthly tempest could break. When the dark summer of 1596 tore her young son Hamnet from her arms, Agnes did not let her spirit curdle into bitterness or despair. Instead, she expanded her soul to hold the suffering of her home, transforming her private grief into an unyielding beacon of quiet, restorative love. Her life stands as an eternal reminder that a mother's devotion is an immortal force, capable of sheltering souls across the vast ocean of time. For William Shakespeare, the complete trajectory of his poetic genius finds its final, sacred fulfillment in the quiet stillness of his native hearth. The monumental dramas that redefined the landscape of human consciousness were not born from cold, distant intellect, but were forged in the fire of his personal heartbreak and domestic devotion. In weaving the spirit of his lost 11-year-old son into the core of his art, William built a permanent bridge between the fragile, temporary world of men and the infinite realm of human memory. His final, permanent return to New Place to spend his remaining years beside Agnes was the ultimate homecoming of his soul, a quiet recognition that all the acclaim, wealth, and applause of the world were merely flickering shadows compared to the deep, wordless peace of a shared life. The unbroken spirit of young Hamnet Shakespeare continues to shine as an eternal star in the sky of human memory. Though his physical life was brief, his presence remains perpetually real, woven into the quiet remedies of his mother, the immortal poetry of his father, and the lifelong, silent devotion of his twin sister Judith. He lives on not as a tragic whisper of loss, but as an eternal symbol of pure wonder, childhood innocence, and the sacred, fragile beauty of every human life that touches the earth. As this multi-part narrative reaches its complete, ultimate, and absolute rest, the visual perspective settles forever upon the tranquil, timeless countryside of Warwickshire. Dawn breaks softly across the rolling green hills, bathing the quiet fields, winding lanes, and thatched roofs of Stratford in a gentle, warm, and everlasting radiance. The River Avon glides peacefully through the morning landscape, reflecting the endless blue of the sky above, while a soft wind sweeps gently through the high canopy of the Forest of Arden. Here, in this holy soil where nature, memory, poetry, and love converge in complete and perfect harmony, the story of Agnes, William, and their beloved child Hamnet achieves its ultimate resting place, forever preserved in the heart of the earth, forever living in the beauty of human art, and forever held in the boundless, eternal light of love. The historical drama motion picture Hamnet was brought to life in late 2025 under the direction of Academy Award winner Chloé Zhao, who co-wrote the screenplay alongside author Maggie O'Farrell, adapting O'Farrell's celebrated 2020 literary novel. Produced with an estimated budget of $30 to $35 million by Hera Pictures, Neal Street Productions, Amblin Entertainment, and Book of Shadows, the film features executive and main production leadership from Liza Marshall, Pippa Harris, Nicholas Gonda, Steven Spielberg, and Sam Mendes. The principal cast stars Jessie Buckley as Agnes Hathaway, Paul Mescal as William Shakespeare, Jacobi Jupe as young Hamnet Shakespeare, Olivia Lines as Judith Shakespeare, Bodhi Ray Brethnick as Susanna Shakespeare, Emily Watson as Mary Shakespeare, David Wilmot as John Shakespeare, and Joe Alwyn as Bartholomew Hathaway. The ultimate, infinite horizon of Hamnet rests upon a vast, timeless stillness where human memory, spiritual devotion, and artistic legacy meet in absolute perfection. Across the endless flow of centuries, physical structures fall into quiet decay, the wooden beams of Henley Street settle into the dark earth, the parchment pages of early folios yellow and turn to dust, and the names carved into ancient church stones grow smooth beneath centuries of gentle rainfall. Yet, the emotional truth born within the domestic life of the Shakespeare family remains entirely untouched by the rust of time. The saga of Agnes Hathaway and William Shakespeare stands as an eternal temple to the power of human love, proving that private sorrow, when held with courage and grace, becomes a permanent sanctuary for all who seek comfort in a fragile world. Agnes Hathaway's presence within this overarching, final vision represents the complete triumph of natural wisdom over temporal decay. Unmoved by social ambition, public recognition, or the rigid dogmas of her era, she walked through existence deeply rooted in the primal, sacred rhythms of the earth. Her intimate sanctuary within the forest of Arden, her quiet knowledge of wild roots, healing herbs, and the cyclical secrets of life and death, offered a steady, unyielding anchor during her family's darkest hours. When the loss of young Hamnet shattered the quiet peace of her home, Agnes did not harden her spirit against the painful reality of mortal life. Instead, she expanded her heart, transforming her deep maternal grief into a living fountain of warmth, shelter, and unconditional love. Her legacy stands as an immortal beacon, showing that a mother's devotion is a force stronger than death, capable of reaching across centuries to heal and protect the human soul. For William Shakespeare, the complete circle of his creative genius finds its true, ultimate resolution in the quiet stillness of his native Warwickshire home. The brilliant dramas that altered the course of world literature were not abstract exercises born of cold ambition, but the direct, living translation of his deepest private wounds into universal poetry. In resurrecting the spirit of his lost 11-year-old son upon the physical stage, William built a sacred, enduring bridge over the chasm of mortality, granting Hamnet a second, immortal life in the collective memory of mankind. His final, permanent return to New Place to spend his twilight years beside Agnes was the ultimate homecoming of his spirit, a quiet realization that all the public acclaim, royal patronage, and theatrical applause in the world were merely passing shadows compared to the deep, silent peace of a life shared in love. The living memory of young Hamnet Shakespeare shines on as an untarnished, eternal star in the vast night sky of human consciousness. Though his physical time upon the earth was brief, his presence remains perpetually real, woven into the quiet remedies of his mother, the immortal plays of his father, and the lifelong, silent devotion of his twin sister Judith. He remains forever young, an eternal symbol of childhood innocence, radiant wonder, and the priceless, fragile beauty of every human life that graces the earth. As this long, multi-part cinematic journey reaches its absolute, final, and eternal conclusion, the visual lens rests forever upon the serene, golden countryside of Warwickshire. Golden twilight settles gently over the rolling green hills, wrapping the quiet meadows, winding lanes, and timbered roofs of Stratford-upon-Avon in a soft, eternal radiance. The River Avon glides peacefully through the evening landscape, reflecting the infinite blue of an open sky, while a gentle wind stirs the high canopy of the Forest of Arden. Here, in this holy earth where nature, memory, poetry, and love unite in complete, perfect harmony, the story of Agnes, William, and their beloved child Hamnet reaches its ultimate resting place, forever preserved in the heart of the earth, forever living in the beauty of human art, and forever held in